This computer.
That was
Okay.
they called ski. That's what they called Ski Mountain in New Jersey. So we're
Got
quite
it.
flat here.
Got it. Well, yeah, I know you can head up to Vermont and get some
Yeah.
skiing in up there. But yes, I actually went to school in Boston, but never had the opportunity to ski on the East Coast. But I've heard that it's different.
Yeah, so my wife's a big skier, and she, apparently and then she told me, and everyone says that the West Coast skiing is way, even though like Vermont is beautiful, like the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania are nice, but the skiing out west is like 10,000 times better apparently.
It's pretty fun. Well, especially when you get a good year, like a good water year like this year in the West. I mean, I think in Colorado, where I live, we're at something like 500% of average for snowpack.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We're hoping that people don't forget that we live under drought conditions here.
Right.
But it's been great for recreation.
Well, Colorado, I mean, actually Colorado and California are probably two of the nicest states in the country. I've been to both, and both are just outstandingly beautiful. Very nice.
Oh, good. Yes, we think so too. Well, Andy, thanks so much for taking the time to connect with us today. Caroline passed off, she mentioned that you had a conversation, I guess probably about a month or 6 weeks ago now, about Camden's green stormwater infrastructure programs, and we just thought it would be a really perfect fit for our sustainability spotlight series, where we feature a Water Now member who's taking the lead on a sustainable water management program. So you might have seen sort of the format in a couple of the links I sent you, but we have sort of a series of questions. We'll take your responses and edit them, transcribe and edit them just a little bit for brevity and clarity, and then send you a version to review and edit and add to however you see fit.
That sounds great. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for leading the way on these programs. I've just been learning a little bit more about it over the last week. It seems like you guys are really doing excellent work.
Well, we're trying. I mean, there's a lot of need here in Camden, and so that in and of itself is an incentive to try to do as much as possible. But then, I really like the idea that a rising tide lifts all boats, so that if we, if just as we've borrowed a lot of our ideas from other innovative utilities and municipalities, maybe if someone might see us, like for example, if we borrow some from the city of Philadelphia, maybe other people might say, "Oh, Philadelphia, that's so big."
Mm-hmm.
And implement that, but they might say, "Oh, Camden, that's more like our size," and that kind of thing. So the thought is that the more that we do, it's good for our community, but we're also hoping it's good for the water sector and for and the environment and the people that we're all trying to help.
Absolutely. A perfect segue to our first question, and my apologies for not getting these out to you sooner. So just feel free, if you have any edits to these, or if there's anything we're not addressing, just jump in. My first question is, why did Camden County MUA make the decision to scale up investment in green stormwater infrastructure?
Okay, well that question, I guess, that's an easy one for us to answer, because so Camden City has a combined sewer system,
mm-hmm.
and so meaning that the stormwater and the sanitary are in one pipe. And so every time it rains, and their system is very, underserved. It's old. It hasn't been replaced. It dates back in some places to the 19th century, and it hasn't been replaced. Camden City is one of the most economically distressed communities in the entire country, and so any combined sewer system, no matter how affluent, would have challenges with regard to combined sewage flooding because of the fact that these pipes are under designed. Combined sewers are kind of like as you probably know, like an antiquated way of conveying flow. And I mean, I hope it's not a segue. In other words, I want to be concise about it, but I guess what I would say in general is that combined sewers are an antiquated way of conveying stormwater to begin with. They were installed prior to the advent of the automobile, and so they weren't counting in the fact that there'd be so much impervious surface, and so therefore the stormwater doesn't sink into the ground. It has no place to go but into the sewer. So most of these combined sewer systems are drastically under-designed and across the country, and as a result, no one uses them anymore. So then you layer on top of that the fact that Camden City is one of the most economically distressed communities in the country. So even if they were affluent, combined sewers are still a problem. But since they're not, they can't afford to do much with their system. So for example, Camden City has a average median household income for the citywide, not just spots of the city, but citywide. Citywide is $26,000 household income.
Wow.
Citywide. Again, you can take a lot of cities and find like bad neighborhoods or challenged neighborhoods with bad household income figures, but that's a citywide figure, and 9.8% unemployment for the city. Again, citywide, not just this neighborhood or that neighborhood.
Right.
So Camden, so they have this combined sewer problem and then they don't have the resources to deal with it because of the economic distress. So we're a regional authority that services Camden City and also 36 other suburban towns. And so frankly, the reason we got involved is that we see, when it rains, there's combined sewage going into people's basements, into the streets, into parks, and then or overflowing into the river. And so how can we say that we're doing even though we don't own the Camden City sewer system, I don't feel that we can say that we're accomplishing our mission to protect the environment, protect the public health, if we didn't do our part, try to do something about Camden's combined sewage flooding problem. And so that's a long-winded answer. I'm sorry, but that's the main reason why we have implemented green infrastructure to depave the city, soak up as much stormwater as possible to reduce combined sewage flooding, combined sewage overflows in Camden, and also to provide green amenities to Camden residents. So that's my long-winded answer to that.
Tell me more about the combined sewer overflows. Is this something that was happening or was happening a lot? Was this becoming worse over time?
Almost every meaningful rain event has some kind of combined sewage flooding incident. And so, you're talking, and it's not just first of all, there's overflows into the river, but also literally kids might be walking through puddles of combined sewage to get to their bus stop. It's a public health issue and it's a social justice issue, and it's been happening for a really long time. So we started our anti-flooding program in Camden in 2010, but because it's not our system, we didn't do it alone. We did it with partners. It's a collaboration, a voluntary collaboration to try to protect the public health and the environment. And I'll say more about that later. But if it was our system, if we owned it, obviously we would have the legal obligation to deal with it, and also the legal ability to solely deal with it. Because it's not our system, because we don't own it, we've taken more of a voluntary, collaborative approach to dealing with the problem.
Great. Did you have MS4 compliance issues?
No, because it's a combined sewer. And again, so first of all, it's not our system to begin with. So we basically own the wastewater treatment plant that receives the flow from the combined sewer system, and also the flow from 36 other towns. So we're a regional wastewater treatment authority. So we don't have an MS4. We wouldn't have an MS4 permit anyway. But as it turns out, Camden doesn't have one because their systems combined.
Okay, got it. Thanks. And what year did you really start making these investments, scaling up this green stormwater infrastructure?
We started the program in 2010.
Okay.
So we're coming up to our 10-year anniversary next year.
Great. Okay, so what types of green infrastructure programs are we talking about?
So our goal basically is to get the multi-purpose benefits of, triple bottom line kind of benefits of green infrastructure. So we've been taking old abandoned sites and trying to get like a win-win, like getting brownfield funding, get funding for brownfield remediation, and turning them into public spaces.
Great.
So like one example was taking an old abandoned factory and turning that was on the riverfront that had been abandoned since the mid-90s, and getting in fact, the Environmental Council of the States, ECOS, awarded this as one of the 10 best uses of the state revolving fund.
Wow.
In the country. So we got state revolving fund, SRF funding, to acquire the property, to demolish the factory, remove 6 acres of impervious surface right on the Delaware River, which was also had radioactive soil running off into the river. We were able to we removed all the contaminated soil, capped it, and then converted it into a 6-acre riverfront park, which finally gives riverfront access to our community. And then we joined that park with another park that was nearby that connected the two. So now we have a total of like a 15-acre riverfront park created from this abandoned factory. That's sort of an example. That's one of the better examples.
It's a great example.
But then on smaller scale, like we've acquired abandoned, orphaned, like an orphaned gas station that had, with leaking underground fuel storage tanks. Got funding for that to demolish this gas station, remove the contaminated soil and the underground fuel storage tanks that have been leaking, and convert it into a 1-acre riverfront park, a rain garden park. And then so there's been we created a nature preserve, a 40-acre nature preserve, which was kind of a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
So we've been opportunistic in just trying to create these green spaces.
Okay, that's great. So you're talking, obviously it sounds like traditional green spaces and public parks. Are you looking at like permeable pavements or bioswales or cisterns?
We've done a bit of that too. So the main thing has been rain gardens and parks has been the biggest, because that's the biggest sort of bang for the buck. But then also rain gardens. We have put in some cisterns. We converted our own parking lot by putting like a rain garden in the middle, and then so we've used permeable pavement at different schools. A lot of demonstration projects. We also have a rain barrel program that we give out free rain barrels to Camden residents and install them for free too. We got, one of the things that's been good about our collaborative approach is that we have a lot of nonprofit partners. So like, for example, the William Penn Foundation gave us funding for the rain barrel program, so we could give the rain barrels to private citizens at no cost. Or we partnered with the Trust for Public Land. When we did a rain garden at one of at schools, we can pay for the rain garden, but we can't pay for playground equipment or benches, things that don't have a water nexus, because we're a public sector entity. But the Trust for Public Land, our partner, they've got funding for the playground equipment and the non-water based appurtenances. So it's a good partnership.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Has your rain barrel program been popular?
It has. I think we've given out about 200 rain barrels, so that's a start. But we were hoping to do better, so we are re-upping it. We partnered with the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, who also works in Philly, and we had predicted about 600. We were hoping for 600, but 200 is what we're at the moment. But we're not done yet.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to do it.
Right. Word of mouth will be one of the best comms tools.
Absolutely. And another thing that we're concerned about is trash. Because Camden has such it's such an economically distressed community. There's a lot of neighborhoods with no trash cans, like on the city block. So we're partnering with the local trash incinerator to put out trash cans in neighborhoods, so that and the nexus is that the trash is on the street, it goes and washes into the storm sewer, then right to the treatment plant. So by making so basically we have an initiative to make Camden cleaner and greener.
Great. Yeah, it's amazing how cross-cutting your organization is.
Right. Well, it's challenging because we don't own the system, but because we have a lot of partners. Ultimately we formed this thing called the Camden Collaborative Initiative, in which we have over 60 environmental and community service nonprofit partners that are working with us on various. Because it goes beyond just green infrastructure. Like we are working on brownfield remediations and reducing illegal dumping. Because again, the idea is, I think the most important thing is that if you look at your mission with a sense of intentionality, that you want to do the most good that you can for the neighborhood and the communities that you're serving, then all of a sudden you can't go out of your lane too much, because it's not legal to do so, but your lane widens a lot. So like a wastewater utility, can be looking at preventing trash, because trash ultimately ends up in the river or ends up at a treatment plant for a combined sewer
Mm-hmm.
community like ours. So, we look for as many opportunities as we can to widen our lane while still staying within it.
Right. That makes sense. So we've touched on this a little bit with some of the discrete projects, but I'm wondering where the bulk of the funding comes for these programs. So is it SRFs? Is it rates? Is it nonprofit partners? Is it all the above?
It's all of the above, but the biggest percentage is from the state revolving fund.
Okay.
Again, because we're wastewater treatment plant servicing a combined sewer community, we can make the case, right, and it's accepted that when we're upgrading Camden City sewer system, that's gray infrastructure, but green infrastructure is also eligible for funding. And luckily, New Jersey's state revolving fund is very robust, and they actually even offer principal forgiveness, which is like a grant in a sense, because you don't have to pay back the loan, the whole part of the loan. It's like getting a grant. So, so the majority of the funds that we've spent would be through the state revolving fund, but we've also gotten open space funds from the county of Camden. We've gotten funding with the William Penn Foundation and the Public Land has acquired. One of our partners is the State University of New Jersey, which is called Rutgers, and they get different kinds of funding. Like, for example, one project we did where we daylighted a stream, we got a certain sum of funds from the SRF. A nonprofit partner got some funds that they qualified for that we wouldn't as a governmental agency, and then the State University got some funding that they qualified for as a university. So, and then we pooled the resources together and did the project as a team.
Yeah. Great. You might not have these numbers ready available, so this could be maybe a follow-up question, but I'm wondering what your estimated, Camden's estimated cost savings from investing in green stormwater infrastructure are, as opposed to, trying to revitalize their whole combined sewer system.
Well, I can give you some round numbers. I mean, basically, there was an estimate done about 5 to 8 years ago, around the time that we created the SMART initiative, which is what we call our green infrastructure program. It's SMART is an acronym for stormwater management and resource training, but it's really obviously a stretch to get to SMART. But anyway, I think I'm proud of our program, and I wish our name was a little better between us.
Okay.
Anyway, but they estimated the city got an estimate from the state that it would cost about $1 billion to separate Camden City sewer system.
Wow.
And I would say we have spent about on green and gray infrastructure, because we've upgraded Camden City sewer system to some extent through the SRF. We've put in the green infrastructure we talked about, greened about 125 acres thus far, and then expanded our wastewater treatment plant to receive more flow. I'd say in total we've probably spent about $100 million total.
Okay.
And we believe, according to the modeling that our consultant has done, that will eliminate 90% of the flooding in Camden City, so at 10% of the cost.
Wow.
So 90% of the flooding will be eliminated by the end of 2020, a year and a half, because most of the work has either been done or is under construction now. So by the end of 2020, our model predicts that for up to the 1 inch, it will eliminate flooding for up to the 1 inch storm, and significantly reduce overflows as well. And so it's about 90% of the flooding and about 10% of the cost of separating the sewer.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible.
We're really happy. Yeah, we're really happy about that. And again, when you have an economically distressed community, well, no community wants to spend 10 times the amount,
yeah,
no matter how affluent. But a city like Camden, it's really necessary. And my point, or a point I'd like to make, would be that that if we can do it here in Camden, really anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And should do it. Should take a similar approach. And again, this is not all our own innovation. A lot of it was borrowed from other practitioners. Just borrowed and adapted. I think the biggest thing that we bring to it is, like I said earlier, this sense of intentionality. That this is our mission. Like, once you decide this is our lane, this is our mission, then either existing ideas or new ideas, are readily, come to the fore readily.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. There's a lot of case studies, examples out there for folks to point to. The one thing that I'll say that I would hear someone saying, in a city that is having similar problems and hasn't addressed it in the way you have is, it seems like, or I guess the thing that I could hear someone saying is, how did they find all this funding? Where do I go to find this funding? How did they have the capacity even to apply for, these 3 different funders to work on the stream management project?
That is a great point, and that really gives me an opportunity to segue into something that I'm really excited about. If it's okay to mention it.
Yeah.
Is that one of the things I'm working on with the US EPA Office of Wastewater in DC, the main DC headquarters, and also the Water Environment Federation and the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, and also is it AMWA or AWWA? AWWA, I guess. AWWA, American Water Works Association, is on a national peer-to-peer initiative. So each of those associations and the EPA are working together and have formed like a steering committee, which I'm serving on, which is to address exactly what you just said, a peer-to-peer, hopefully ultimately a 50-state initiative, in which utilities with capacity, sufficient capacity, would help utilities and municipalities that are resource strapped. I mean, it's not we're not giving money away, because obviously public sector entities can't give money from that came from one district and give them to another, but just resources, like someone could contact. How did you apply for the SRF? Well, here's how we did it, and here's a copy of our RFP. Here's a copy of our application. Here's a copy of our specification. Just to lower the barriers, to make it easier for other people to replicate. And so the idea is free knowledge sharing. Now, of course, it happens from time to time. That's why people go to conferences. They hear someone's presentation or they get someone's card. But the idea is, instead of it happening by happenstance, to do it in a more systematic way, where there are utilities that are lined up that are willing to offer this kind of assistance to their fellow public sector water practitioners. And not everyone's good in everything, but everyone's good in something. So maybe we would offer help in the SRF, and maybe someone else would offer help with green energy or asset management. Different utilities would have different strengths and would be able to offer different, and a lot of it is just providing documents you've already generated, but letting someone use them and adapt them to their own municipal, their own local laws and local requirements.
Right. That's really excellent. What's the initiative called?
Called the National Water Wastewater Peer-to-Peer Initiative. National Wastewater Peer-to-Peer Initiative.
Awesome. And
so far, 4 utilities have signed up to be like pilot peers, if you will. Camden, my utility, Camden County MUA, is one of them, and then also Alexandria, Virginia, Great Lakes in Chicago, Great Lakes Authority, and Louisville.
Louisville, cool. That's great. That's really exciting. It seems like there would be. I mean, I know that you're familiar at a high level, at least with WaterNow's Tap into Resilience initiative, which shares a similar vision of trying to put as many resources into the hands of people that need them as possible, and engaging with experts in the space to do that. So we'll have to see how those things develop alongside and stay coordinated.
Absolutely, because the shame of it is that that's why we have conferences, is that there are people who are who have information that would be useful to others, and they're willing to share. They're going to conferences and presenting at it, and there are people who need that information, but there's no systematic way of delivering it reliably. It all depends on, like, did you happen to go to that presentation? But maybe the session you should have gone was you know, 3 doors over, but you didn't know? Or more importantly, how about non-network utilities that don't have the funding to go to these conferences and don't have the opportunity to connect? Like, I'm lucky, I mean, because I'm on the NACWA board. If I have a question, I can pick up the phone and talk to, or send an email and talk to like the head person in New York or Chicago and say, what did you do about this? And that I would get some advice because we're glad to help each other. But the non-network utility doesn't have that opportunity. But so how do we bring that knowledge, which is free and available, to municipalities that non-network utilities, municipalities that need it most? And that's the idea of the peer-to-peer initiative.
Yeah, that's great. So your program is coming up on 10 years. Well, I guess this is a separate question. I was going to move on, but are you, do you see your SMART program pretty much built out at this point, or do you have, you know, are you aiming to keep expanding it?
Definitely not. For one thing, there's more green to do. Because we want to minimize flooding and overflows, and the greener it is, the better. From that perspective, but also the greener the city, the better it is for the city. So we're one of our best partners. I mean, we don't favor it. So one of our strongest partners is the Trust for Public Land, and we're working with them. You know, they work all around the country as a nonprofit, but we're grateful that they're working with us here in Camden, and they want to make sure that Camden is a city that every resident is no more than a 10-minute walk from a park. So, so we're supporting that because of it. I mean, they're doing that because it's beneficial to get people outdoors and have as a public right to have, you know, green space access. And the way we look at it is it's right up our mission too, because by greening the city, we're reducing the creation of combined sewage. You know, the more pervious surface there is, the better. And the other reason we want to do that is because, and this hasn't come up yet, but it might, are you going to ask about green infrastructure maintenance?
I wasn't planning on it, but we should definitely talk about it.
Okay, yeah, because I'm sorry, I saw you sent me the link, but I didn't have a chance to look at the questions.
Yeah,
so I apologize about that. But anyway, so the second reason why we really want to do this, the one is because green is good in and of itself from the standpoint of, you know, it's just good for people, and it's also good for you know, good for the environment, good for, you know, capturing spreading combined sewage by soaking up the stormwater, etc. But the second main reason why we want to keep going is because of green maintenance. Now you might say, why is that? Because it goes to this idea of looking at things from a lens of intentionality toward maximizing the good. So we created these 125 acres of green space, you know, 5 riverfront parks and 60 rain gardens and all that. But, you know, normally in many cities, most cities, the sewer authority would turn that over to the Parks Department. Well, Camden is so economically distressed, they don't have a Parks Department.
Oh, okay.
There's no one for us to turn it over to, and they don't have the resources. Remember, it's a household income of $26,000. It's one of the most economically stressed communities in the country. So so the green infrastructure we create, even though it's for Camden City, we have to maintain it. We can't turn it over to them. So of course, it has to be maintained. So it has to be us that has to maintain it. So the normal thing you would do if you were looking at just in a conventional way, is well, I guess we'll go out for bids for a landscaping company, and we'll get the lowest bid, and we'll have a landscaping company take care of the green infrastructure. But if you look at a lens from a lens of intentionality, I remember I mentioned that Camden City has an unemployment rate of 9.8%.
Yeah.
So and again, it was hearing about someone else's program, Philadelphia's program, right across the river from us. They have a program that with an AmeriCorps grant where they actually train at-risk youth from 18 to 25, young men and women from 18 to 25 who are at risk. They might have some kind of a minor criminal record, or they don't have a high school degree, so they're not at the top of the class. Maybe they're not even in class, but they're not criminals either. They're at risk. They can go either way. And the idea is to try to offer them a job and also life skills training to help them with the issues that made them at risk to begin with, and then have them do the green infrastructure. So they basically do the green infrastructure, say 5 hours a day, and maybe 2 to 3 hours a day they're getting life skills training. They're getting a job. They're getting paid 8 hours a day. And this is Philadelphia's program. We adapted, and we're in year 4 of the program.
Awesome.
So we've 240 young men and women have gone through our program. Basically, every 6 months, a new cohort comes in. They get life skills training, and they also get training on how to maintain and manage green infrastructure. They get a full-time job for 6 months. They get all this life skills training, and they also get training on how to they get a credential of sorts, and then they get job placement, and then the next cohort comes in. So, and because we get an AmeriCorps grant, this does cost more because you're paying for the life skills training as well as the maintenance part.
Mm-hmm.
But because we have a 50% grant from AmeriCorps, the cost is about the same. So basically, at no extra cost to our ratepayers, in the same service, maintaining the green infrastructure, we're now able to give 60 young men and women a green job and a hope for the future. And it's one of my favorite things that we've done. So the more we can expand our green infrastructure program, the more green jobs we can create as well in Camden. So,
Cool.
And it all stems from this idea of having a very intentional goal of fulfilling your mission in the most optimal way possible.
Yeah. Are you have you followed up with, now that you're in year 4, are you following up with students who have gone through the program? Do you have any metrics on where they've ended up?
Yes, I mean, so the job placement is probably like 25 to 30%, which is not great. But bear in mind, part of the problem is that, you know, like they came in with like maybe no credentials. That's why they don't have a job, and now they have landscaping, you know, green infrastructure maintenance, and the opportunities are limited. So we look at it more like the glass from the bottom up, in a sense that, you know, it was 0%. They had 0% jobs, and now it's, you know, we're up to 25 to 30%. But we're working with a nonprofit, which I'm really excited about, to maybe get some fund, not a nonprofit, a foundation that might give us more funding in order to try to get a different kind of training, like expand the variety of training. So I guess they're working on green infrastructure, but maybe they'll get training in plumbing or construction projects.
Yeah.
So, you know, so Drexel which is a university in Philadelphia, so very close to us. They've given us a proposal on how to help us provide more varied training to the PowerCorps graduates, and then also we're hoping this foundation will help us with that funding, with some funding as well. So that's a little bit out of our lane because, you know, but the idea is if we can get outside funding, then it really isn't out of our lane. You know, we're just serving as a platform for it.
Right. Exactly.
So that's what we're working on, and we're in fact I'll be presenting on there's a water workforce symposium in Washington D.C. At first week of August, and I'll be presenting on our PowerCorps program, where we're at and what we're hoping to accomplish with it.
The whole program is called PowerCorps?
Yes, in fact, I just did a presentation, a webinar that was sponsored by the U.S. Water Alliance on Friday, along with my counterparts in Buffalo and Louisville, about water equity in general. You know, and a lot of it had to do with green infrastructure and green jobs, although there's some other things too that I mentioned. So if that would be helpful, I could forward that.
Actually, yeah, that would be really helpful. And I actually meant to participate in that, but I had a conflict. So that's too bad, but I'm glad we're getting to connect now.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. So I think we've touched on this, but I just want to give you the chance in case you have anything to add. So, you know, obviously the main goals of this overarching project was stormwater control and water quality, but what additional community benefits are you seeing? So we've talked about parks and open space and job training. Anything else?
Well, so yes, definitely parks and open space, job training, waterfront access. So Camden is like a peninsula. It's surrounded by water. You know, between the Delaware River and also its tributaries. So one of the things we want to do is get people out to the water, the waterfront. So that's sort of a spin-off of our green, our open space program. The green jobs is really important. The other thing is that you know, as I mentioned earlier, we're also trying to get win-win. So we're doing brownfield remediation in a lot of cases. So like we're not just looking for pristine properties to do the rain gardens or parks, but but most because Camden is a post-industrial city,
Mm-hmm.
nearly every parcel we find has some kind of contamination from the historic contamination.
Right.
So so it does make it a little bit more costly, but we're getting a win-win.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So we're sort of moving this. So you're at 90% reduced. I'm sorry, I'm looking at a minute. Reduced flooding by 2020, or that's the goal.
That's more than just a goal. It's kind of like that's what the model predicts. Like, in other words, we have construction underway that as long as that once it's finished, according to the modeling of the system, 90% will be eliminated as long as assuming the model is correct, which it's been validated, so it's likely to be right.
Absolutely, that's great. Well, yeah. So my next question was, and I think we've kind of gotten there, but my next question was, what's next for Camden's Green Stormwater Infrastructure Program? That sounds like, even though you have this really excellent metrics to prove up the program, you're still going to be pushing forward.
Absolutely, and for those two reasons. One, we want to maximize, really three reasons: maximize environmental benefit by reducing overflows and flooding, maximize the triple bottom line green benefit for our neighbors by making the city cleaner and greener, which has a benefit in and of itself, and then also the green jobs is really another incentive to try to keep going and do as much as the city can absorb from a spatial perspective.
Mm-hmm. Great. My last question, bringing it back to a sort of more macro level, why do you think that sustainable water management in Camden and in New Jersey more broadly is so important? Why are you doing this work?
Well, as I see it, I know there are some people that don't believe in climate change. I'm not one of them, but I know that there are people out there, and if I'm speaking to an audience where there might be like a mixture.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it this way: that in New Jersey, we had a very significant storm in 2012, Hurricane Sandy, that resulted in billions of gallons of raw sewage overflowing and flooding into the Atlantic Ocean and the tributaries, and the same would have happened in the Delaware, just that the storm was more to the east than to the west. So, and then if you look at New Orleans and Houston last year and Puerto Rico last year, whether you believe in climate change, I believe that there are many parts of our country and probably the world that can look to climate history. Mm-hmm. That we've already seen that the water infrastructure that we have right now is not adequate to meet the climate as it is right now. Even if you don't believe it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
Even if you don't believe that no matter what, the climate as it already is, mm-hmm. is already, our infrastructure is not sufficient to handle it. You saw flooding in Puerto Rico, in Houston, in New Orleans, in New Jersey, mm-hmm. and elsewhere across the country. So our water infrastructure is already not adequate to handle the climate as it is right now, even if it doesn't get any worse. And there are many people, including myself, who do believe and predict that it will get worse. But even if it doesn't get worse, our infrastructure is already inadequate. So I think that in order to protect the public health and to protect the rivers and streams that we rely upon, it's essential to take these sustainability steps to reduce combined sewage flooding. And then if you have to do that, then you might as well, and you ought to, do it in the way that has the maximum benefit for the community that you serve. Yes, it's a good idea to put an underground tunnel because that captures the stormwater, but 90% of the time that tunnel will be empty and not helping anybody. Yeah. So if you can find a way to put in green infrastructure that benefits the community with these multi-benefit things that we discussed earlier, then you're doing your job and doing it in the way that's optimally beneficial for the community that you serve.
Absolutely. Great, thank you.
No problem.
So those are the questions that I had for you, and I think I think you gave me a lot of information to go off of. This is really excellent. Is there anything that you think we missed, or any other information you want to provide?
The only thing I would mention is that in addition to green infrastructure, Green energy and resiliency is also another part of that same, another related, issue that water utilities really need to take up.
Yeah.
With increased storms, there's a potential for greater potential for power outages and I mean, if you have, for example, if you have a storm like Hurricane Sandy and have power outages for a week at a time, then the wastewater treatment plant will be discharging billions of gallons of raw sewage and undoing all the good we've been doing.
Right.
So it's really important for wastewater treatment plants to work on being resilient. And of course, drinking water plants need to be resilient because we need drinking water at all times, right? So fresh, reliable drinking water. So to me, it seems as though resiliency is really important. And of course, if a utility reduces its own carbon footprint, wastewater and drinking water plants supposedly use up 4% of the nation's energy.
Mm-hmm.
So if we are more resilient and more green, we're doing our part to reduce carbon footprint and reduce, global warming and that sort of thing. So we're reducing our own contribution, but we're also making ourselves more resilient against. And again, that's whether you believe in climate change. That's just how the climate already is. We've already seen that the infrastructure is inadequate for how the climate already is. So it's essential to do that. So we've been working to get off the grid, to basically be energy independent, to generate our own energy.
Mm-hmm.
By the June of 2020, we'll be running our plant mainly on solar and self-generated biogas from our sludge. So if there's a power outage, we'll still be running.
That's great. That's awesome.
And other treatment plants across the country are definitely going in that direction as well. So it's something else that has to be considered, for a sustainable water utility should be thinking about that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that there's a lot of, as there should be, there's a lot of focus on building in resiliency in our systems when it comes to our water supply and quality and stormwater management. But there also needs to be more conversation about sustainable water management and climate mitigation being a part of that conversation.
Exactly. We need to protect ourselves and also do our part not to make things worse.
Yeah, great. Okay, this was so wonderful to talk with you, Andy.
Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much for you giving us the opportunity to be featured in your program.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this was wonderful. And I am sure that Caroline, or I hope that Caroline mentioned this to you, but Water Now is bringing our next annual summit this coming spring to Philadelphia.
Yes.
So it's April 15th through 16th, and we'll send you a save the date. Actually, it'll go out the same time this article goes out, so it's like really perfect timing in our July newsletter. But I'd love for you to mark your calendar, because I can say, without much hesitation, even though we haven't even started building the agenda, that we want you to speak, and we'd love to have you participate and represent Camden and talk about this story.
Wow, that'd be terrific. I'd be glad to do it. And it's a very easy commute. I can look out the window and see Philadelphia from my window because we're so close. So
good.
Right across the river. So yeah, that would be terrific. I'd be glad to do it.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll be at the Inn at 10.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for all of your good work.
Thank you.
Okay, so Kiara and I will take our notes. We'll we'll pare down a little bit for brevity, consistency, and then we'll send it back to you. Our goal will be to get this back to you by Friday.
Okay.
And then let's see. Let me look at my calendar. Ideally, if you could turn it around to us within like 3 or 4 days, that would be great.
Okay. Sure, absolutely. Yes, and if you do have any, as you go through notes, if you have any questions or follow up, please feel free to ask.
Okay, we definitely will. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was nice talking with you both.
Yeah, you as well. And we'll definitely be in touch soon.
I'll keep an eye out. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Andy.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Kiara?
Hi.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was so cool.